Trapped by the belief that I'm not good enough, bound by the limitations and the lies that consumed my world, this was me. It wasn't until I took the biggest leap in my life to know and trust the power within. And it was at that moment I made a choice. My past will not define me anymore. Hello, I am Teri, and I know I am not alone in this. Over the years, I have found that the number one mistake that we make is that we get in the way of our own success story. Yes, I said it. On this show, together we'll tackle limiting beliefs, self-sabotage, getting stuck, fear, doubt, overwhelm, and the imposter syndrome. Join us on this journey designed to transport you beyond your limitations to a world where anything is possible. This is Talking with Teri. Hello, and welcome back to Talking with Teri, where we have powerful conversations to transform your life and your business. And I'm delighted because we're already hooting it up off camera here. Our special guests today, Fran Bontempo and Kristin Smedley. These women are the co-owners of Brilliantly Resilient. And I'm going to invite these ladies, they've done some incredible things. I'm going to invite these ladies to dive in, and bring us up to speed how you guys got to where you're at today with this company.
Well, Teri, everything went according to plan.
Fantastic. End of interview.
Liar. She's a liar.
Everybody was like, oh, good. Let's hear how it went all according to plan. Oh, that's how we got together. Nothing in our lives went according to plan, including Brilliantly Resilient.
That's the truth. That is the truth. Yeah, we were put together by a mutual frenemy. We refer to her as a frenemy because we're not quite sure whether this was a good thing or a bad thing. But she put us together in a mastermind a number of years ago because we were both on similar paths. We realized after we got to know each other that we had both dealt with major sucker punches. She calls them sucker punches. I call them train wrecks in our lives. And that we actually shared a process that got us through it. So that was the creation of Brilliantly Resilient. We were like, we could teach other people how to do this. So just for the short part of the story, Kristin is raising two blind sons, and my son struggled with substance abuse and heroin addiction and all that for many, many years. So that's the really shortened version of how Brilliantly Resilient came to be. But I'll let Kristin tell you what happened when we launched it.
Yeah, for your listeners out there and your viewers that have an idea to start something, or maybe have just started something, and you've got or like checklist people like Fran and I are, like, we're going to do this, we've learned all these things and it's going to launch perfectly. Well, what could possibly happen when we are going to start this live event tour? We have the first one here in our hometown in the Philly area. It's a wild success. Everyone is loving the message. And the folder on my laptop says Brilliantly Resilient World Tour. That's what we were going on, right? What could possibly go wrong? I don't know. Maybe a pandemic shuts down all live events. It was so funny, Teri. Here's how clueless we were of what was going to happen. Our event, we're getting everything ready. And that morning we were texting each other, let's make sure we have the cases of water. Did anyone pick those up? And then something's going on about hand sanitizer. Should we have some of that? And there was no water, no hand sanitizer. Costco looked like we were in a third world country. There was nothing there. And I'm like, do you think something's happening here? So to say that we had to do a major pivot after that is the understatement of our journey.
Yes.
Which ended up dovetailing with the whole theme of being brilliantly resilient.
Yes. I can't imagine launching an event. I had probably one of the last events. I think I had an event end of February, and then I was like, we're going to have another event in June. And then I'm like, that's not going to happen. Yeah.
We were March 7th, literally the week before the world shut down. We were March 7th, and then everything was done.
So you didn't have your event at all?
We had the event.
Oh, you did. You did have your event. Oh,
and we celebrated. We have all these fun boomerangs of us doing the after party and cheersing the champagne. And then we've been looking at each other on Zoom screens for entirely long.
So what has been, that has been the story for a lot of entrepreneurs, right? The pandemic has definitely made us more resilient. And, something that, not many of us have lived through this type of pandemic, right? I mean, like, I know, like, 20 and 30 years ago, this was, this has happened, but, for a lot of us, this was kind of like our first go around with this. And so what were some of the life lessons that you ladies, kind of, let's dovetail, let's lay on, some of you're talking about, you have this process that you take folks to go through, let's have that conversation around what does that look like with the process that you guys took through to overcome this challenge in your life, in your business.
That's awesome.
The process is really divided into 3 parts. We say you reset, then you rise, then you reveal your brilliance. So the reset is where every one of us found ourselves at the beginning of this pandemic. You're taken back to the very, very basics of everything in your world. And I mean, clearly all of us with the global pandemic had that. But for Kristin and I, as we said, our personal stories were, I thought I did everything right raising my son. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, let's be clear, it was a process again, but finding out that your son's a heroin addict and into substance abuse. And Kristin gives birth to this beautiful baby boy, and 4 months later finds out that he's blind, as she often says, is the first blind person she ever met. So the reset part of it is where you get back to basics and you figure out 3 pieces. What are your values? What's really, really important to you that you cannot compromise on? What's your perception? And Kristin has a story about that. And the last piece of it is, what can you actually control? Not in the land of magical thinking, in terms of what are the controllables. So the reset is the first piece of it.
Yeah. So just those 3 things alone, I'm sure that a lot of your listeners realize now that they had to, if they kept moving forward, they did some of those and didn't even realize it. So for us, controlling the controllables is still probably my hardest thing in resetting after things don't go my way. I am a recovering control freak.
We all have something, right?
I'm a Virgo, I was raised Catholic in Catholic school. So I am the list maker and the checker offer. So when things are not in my control, that is very hard for me. So I was practicing these strategies constantly through the pandemic. Plus I had my 3 kids at home and there was a lot happening that I had to worry about, as did everybody else.
Yeah.
But I think the 2 biggest things that helped us go into the stratosphere that we're in now was we took a look at our values as a company and as women that came together. And the reason we came together with such success is because we do share core values. And we really brought it to the bones of that as we were sobbing for about a week over the fact that we were not going to be able to get out there and do our thing. I mean, we're speakers, we are entertainers, we're on stages.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do it. So our thing was, we are number 1 of service to others. That is our number 1 core value that we share, and the business is built on. So we decided whatever we were going to do, we still had to serve the people we were intending to serve. And it just so happened that it became a Zoom thing instead of being on stages. And the other piece of it is how you look at it, and I learned this from having a blind child. I could sit there forever and look at it as my dreams were destroyed. And once I finally realized it was about him, not me, and he was perfectly happy, I moved on. So when we looked at our situation, we wanted to be on stages and have the crowd. But then I started looking at it as, hey, when you're on Zoom, you don't even have to brush the back of your hair.
I mean,
this could
or
be
put
cool.
on pants,
Yeah.
I am not one of those people, but it is optional, it is transitioning people back into, the world. And so people, wearing, clothes and, I heard that the increase of purchasing clothes has increased, like, I don't know what the number is, but it's insanely increased because now people are realizing that they have to put clothes back on. And so I'm like, who knew, right? Like, who knew?
I know. There was some fun fact about shirts. Tops had outsold bottoms by like 100,000%.
I truly didn't understand that, because I still, like, for those that are not watching, I still dress up and I still have like the whole get up on, jewelry, everything. And so I was not one of those people, because I was like, I feel frumpy if I don't put feel put together, right? So anyhow, but you're right. But and here's the blessing that I found is that, so I kind of made this, I'm in Colorado, so I'm sorry for my East Coasters over there. I just made a choice not to travel to the East Coast anymore, because in Colorado, we are kind of like we're kind of spoiled because we can go fly direct pretty much anywhere, but coming from the East Coast back, we cannot get a direct flight. Like I looked everywhere up and down, like you cannot get a direct flight. And so it's just an exhausting travel, right? So I made the choice maybe 3 years ago to stop traveling to the East Coast and to save all this time, right? And during the pandemic, I was able to like travel virtually everywhere, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't, you don't have to travel, you don't have to, all of that, and so it was really great. And I'm sure you guys felt the same way or had this similar experiences, like we could have a bigger impact, because you could speak twice or 3 times in a day versus once, right? And so it was having a bigger impact in that capacity. So
yeah.
Yeah, I think it all came back to, again, those pieces of what's really important. For us, it was being of service.
yeah,
What's your perspective? You can sit and whine and moan and groan and complain that things aren't going the way you want, or you can look at, as you said, the opportunity that lies within that. And then, okay, we can't do this, but what can we do?
Yes.
So, when we put those pieces together, that reset piece, it's all kind of about, when you're hit with a sucker punch or a change or whatever, it's really about clarity. It's really about clarifying what's real, what's not real, what am I making up in my head and making worse, and what can I actually do about it. So that's the reset piece. And then the second part of this whole thing is where we talk about the rise, where you take a look at your skills and talents, the things that you're good at, and what of those are transferable.
yes.
And how you use that, and all that ends up leading to your brilliance.
Yeah. And honestly, all of the mindset thing is great, and keep yourself in check and your mental health. But as your business owners that are listening realize, nothing is going to happen if you don't take that one action step forward. For me, I was always planning the 15 action steps, right? And then I would get crippled by, I don't know how to do the rest of it. But so, in our the resilient process, we talk about just do one thing.
Yeah.
One step forward, like one thing. And Mary Fran is famous for I think it was probably, we went live every day for 100 days. And I think every single day before we went live, Mary Fran had to remind me not to be married to outcomes, not to worry about what the end product was going to be, where it was going to go. We were just going to give it. We were going to be of service. We were going to go through all of that, and have this show still, it turned into a show instead of the stage thing. And, to your point, Teri, the people that we were able to reach around the world, and the people we were able to talk to interview just by because here's the funny thing, nobody could go anywhere. And everyone was figuring out Zoom.
Audience.
Yeah, and they were totally looking for something online to watch, because their kids were all hogging Netflix and Hulu and all that. And it ended up just to be, like I said, we went live 100 days in a row.
That is
Resilient Live was on the air on Zoom through Facebook, and I think we tried YouTube once. But the beauty of it was, everything was falling apart in the world. So we just tried everything. We were like, I was like, oh my gosh. And well, you have a nice style of hair, Teri. When we couldn't get to the salons, right? My hair was like, I've got some serious hair issues. And I'm like, well, I'm just going to put a hat on. Like, who cares? The world's falling apart, and I'll just wear my baseball hat, and we just did it. We just did it, and we didn't know where it was going to go, because it was nowhere in the plan, but we stuck to those values and all those pieces, and it ended up just brilliant. And as Mary Fran said, one of the key pieces is, you look at, we had no intention to be online and on this, screen, but we looked at the skills that we had, and we were like, we are communicators, we are storytellers, we are funny. One of us is funnier than the other, but I'm just going to walk away from that one right now.
A legend in her own mind.
And we just used all those skills to put it into this Zoom show that then became a podcast, and then it became a book. I mean, it's just, and now we're, getting to chat with you, and someday you'll come visit us in Philly. I have a feeling.
Yeah, we're gonna get you to Philly.
I'm gonna find you a direct flight.
Get you to Philly, girl.
Find that direct flight. No, I can get out there. It's just coming back. I'm just going to stay out there with you guys. That's the problem. I'm just going to stay with you. So be careful what you wish for. So I think this, and I think that's such a lesson is like, when we are in that place of just, I think sometimes when the world closes in, on us, whether that's prior pandemic, after pandemic, because the world's going to close in on us, on our businesses at some point and again, right? And, I love teaching and talking about, actually, when the pandemic happened, I had a different perspective about it. I chose consciously not to go in fear. And I kind of got a little, some criticism from it, but it's like, you know what, I'm just choosing not to go in fear. Fear is not going to serve me, and it's not going to allow me to do my greater work and help other people. Because if I am in a place of pure positive energy, I can do more work and help other people with me than what we can if I go into fear. Right. And so I created a call on Tuesday mornings, and it's really about, there's a great quote that says, all birds seek shelter in the storm, except for the eagle. The eagle is the only one that flies above the storm. And so very aware of the storm, but I didn't have to be in the storm, because I feel like we can be of service when we are, truly helping other people. And we are, when we are staying in that high vibration as well. And I don't know where I was going with that. But I think that it's really important, because I think sometimes when we go into that fear mode, when the world closes in, that we want to stop. We want to stop because we want to go into fear mode. And if, like you were saying, just take one more step, right? Just continuing taking action. And I think sometimes, I love talking about mindset. I love talking about, how to clear the blocks, and, how do we allow ourselves to use universal laws to help support our businesses and grow our businesses. But if we are not taking action, we're not going to get there. We're just not, it requires that action taken piece for us to move any type of mountains.
One of the things that you talked about there about choosing not to be in fear. One of the other things that we talk about is, you're going to have these sucker punches. We've all had this global one, but everybody has individual ones, but you have a choice to make. And that choice is this: are you just visiting that place of challenge, or are you going to live there? Like and that doesn't mean that doesn't diminish anything that you're going through, but you don't have to unpack your bags and just say, okay, this is it. This is miserable. I'm going to be miserable for the rest of my life. Nothing's going to work out the way I planned. You deal with the experience, you acknowledge it, you feel what you have to feel, but then you control those controllables, and you decide that you're not going to live permanently in that either state of mind or place of crisis, because things do change. And as Kristin said, when you do that one thing, other things are going to happen in reaction to that. And you kind of have to wait to see what that is. So you don't spiral, you don't go planning 29 steps down the road. You do that one thing, having made the decision that you're going to start to get out of that yucky place. And then you see what's going to happen without being completely tied to that outcome. Like, oh, if it doesn't go my way, then I'm going to be miserable again. You have to, the world's not predictable. So you have to learn to make peace with that.
Exactly. It's interesting too, when I'm so glad Mary Fran brought up that phrase that she developed, and it's literally a mantra in my life now, because, I am one to get hit by the sucker punch and go down, spiral into the pit. Right. And then she was almost every day was saying, okay, fine, give yourself 5, 10, 15 minutes to sob about it, but you cannot unpack your bags here. You're not going to come out of it. And this is now in the middle of a pandemic. I had I know all divorce is horrific. Mine, I am competitive. I will say,
not one you want to win.
Mine takes the cake. So this nightmare is happening. And then I've got 2 blind kids at home. One had to leave college. He's home. He's upset about that. Now they're trying to learn virtually. You cannot do the Braille and all those things and mobility lessons virtually. Things just kept coming, right? So it was a constant daily reset, rise. And that mantra of, Are you going to live there or are you just visiting? Was every single day. Now, I am one for, I like to perfect something and move on. And this every single day, having to do it through a crisis after crisis after crisis, nearly drove me nuts. But what I realized just last week, if you can, my thing is always about how can you see your challenges differently, right? How can your perspective change how you are looking at something? And I realized that in my deepest pits of the sucker punches and the sadness and the upsetment and the fear, in the deepest pits I've been in, my most biggest epiphanies have come out of them. But it's because I chose to do this reset, rise, reveal process, as opposed to, oh my God, my life sucks and I'm just destined for this. It really is. I know that we say it all the time, it's about a choice, but it really comes down to a choice. These things may feel like they're happening to you, but it really is for you if you choose to look at it that way.
I agree with you. That's one of the things that I talk about all the time is this is happening for me, not to me. And even in the things that I don't understand, because as soon as we get some distance from it, we can look back and be like, wow, I am so grateful that that happened, because if that didn't happen, I wouldn't have met this person and that wouldn't have happened and da, 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 da. And it's just like, there's like this domino effect, right? And I agree, when we're in that moment, we can only see that moment right in front of us. And so, we do have that choice. And I always tell people, like, you were talking earlier about, being a recovering control freak, right? And I always say, there's nothing that we can control except for how we show up, right? How we show up, how we respond, react. Are we going to be in a crappy mood? Are we going to be in a good mood? Like, we have that capacity to control that. And that's about it as far as what we can control. And so if we are starting to look at, and like you said, like the perspective change, if we can look at how do we start, and this is, I feel like is a skill, is flipping the script, which is, finding the gifts. It's allowing ourselves to really, flip the perspective of how this is showing up for ourselves. And I always joke that I used to be the biggest victim of my own life, because I was so negative and I was a blamer. I blamed on everything. I was like, well, if this wasn't working, it's their fault. It's their fault. But once you start taking ownership and responsibility for, like, okay, this is happening, and I have a choice to make on how I show up and respond to it or react to it, it makes all the difference. It absolutely does make all the difference.
Yeah. That piece of surrender and letting go, we tend to think of surrender as a negative thing, and it really isn't, because when you let go of all of the attachments that you have to these things and stop looking for reasons to be annoyed or offended.
Yes.
It really you can find them. They're out there. You walk out your front door, something's not going to make you happy. So, that's a choice too. But I think the important piece of what you were saying was that, and we will never, Kristin and I will never say that our sucker punches were gifts. We will never say that, because they really sucked. I mean, they just did. There's there's nothing fun about it. But it is what it is. But the key, and I think this is what takes us to a different level with the resilience talk, is that within that is where you find your brilliance. Like, Kristin and I both realized in the midst of our challenges with our kids that we were, really good at amassing information, really good communicators, really good at reaching out to people, really good at creating and planning things that were going to help our situations. And then we took those transferable skills and moved them to other places. So within those challenges, that's where your brilliance is. That's your skill set. And those things are transferable. And that's kind of the message that we want people to see. Like, yeah, this is pretty crappy, but look at how you're coping. Look at what you're making out of this and see what your strengths are and how you can move them on and uncover your brilliance.
Yeah. And how are you growing as a person? How are you growing as a mom? How are you growing as a spouse? How are you growing as this individual? It's very powerful. So ladies, I think we could sit here and talk all day. And we might have to just have you ladies back on the show for sure. So besides what we've already talked about today, what is, and maybe each of you find one thing that you have found, like a concrete tool, strategy, or nugget that you can leave the audience with that was like really profound, beyond what you've already mentioned already.
Well, I can tell you this. If you think, I've said a couple of times, it's the way you're looking at your sucker punch, your challenge, that is a big part of your issue if you're stuck. And take it from a mom that has 2 blind kids. If I could change the way I saw blindness as an opportunity to do things in a whole different way and see the literal blessings in blindness. My guys have so many talents that kids their age just don't have because of the way they've had to live their lives. And it's all coming to incredible fruition now. But if I could see blindness completely different, I would challenge you to tell me there's a situation that you can't see some gifts in and some opportunities. So I definitely tell people, take a look at how you're looking. And to add one more thing, because I know blindness is like, that's a little hard to relate. In my divorce, I was so upset in the beginning because I wanted the 50th anniversary that my parents had. That was a big goal for mine. And I saw it as a loss of an opportunity like that. Then when I started seeing it as an opportunity to go back and get in touch with who I was 20 years before the madness began and be able to be me again, it was like soaring from sadness to soaring in months. So take a look at how you're looking at things.
I love it. I love it. How about for you, Mary Fran?
This kind of touches on the don't be married to outcomes thing, but I would say this, and I'll put it in a little phrase. When you let go of the way you think things should be, you make room for what they could be.
Oh, I love it.
So stop looking at everything and saying, well, that's not supposed to be like that. That shouldn't be. And think about, okay, what could it be? So let go of what it should be, make room for what it could be.
Beautiful. What a way to wrap up today. Ladies, we are going to be adding all the information into the show notes, but where can people find you and connect with you, ladies?
Well, you can find everything we do at brilliantlyresilient.net. And I highly recommend that you go wherever you listen to podcasts. I'm a podcast junkie. Go scroll through the episodes of the Brilliantly Resilient podcast, and you'll find, situations that you're currently in, you're trying to reset or rise, or you're trying to be a recovering control freak. We've got episodes from some really cool people on the podcast. And then our book that we're so proud of, we dive into each of these pieces for you in the book. And that's, you can get that on Amazon.
I love it. Wonderful. Thank you, ladies. It's just been such a delight. Thank you for being brilliantly resilient in the sense of, really creating a powerful movement that we can help teach others to be resilient in as well. Thank you, ladies.
Thanks for having us, Teri.
I am so grateful that you joined me for this episode. If you've enjoyed this, then there's just one thing that I would like you to do. Click to subscribe and leave me a rating and review. As my way to thank you, let's connect for a free consultation. Just reach out to me at talkingwithteri, that's TERI.com, to book your time.